Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. It's great to see everyone. As far as I know, we're going to jump right in. So, guys, we are here today because this panel is called Conversations AI is Not Allowed to Have. Not because these questions are impossible to answer.
I can't
But
hear you.
Oh, no. Can everyone else hear me? Okay. Helen can't hear me either. All right, guys, hang on one second. Let's make sure we can get everyone together here. Check sound out in settings. All right, let's give it just a minute to get everyone here and we'll get going.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Serenity.
Mm-hmm. If for some reason audio doesn't work, I hear that phones work as well if we need to reconnect by phone.
Oh, no.
All right. Hey, Helen, can you hear me now?
I can. I don't know what happened there. It was fine and then it stopped.
All right, great. At least we got here. Teresa? All right, well, I'm going to... hopefully, let's give her 1 second. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to keep going with just the introduction here. It's pretty quick. These conversations aren't impossible to answer. They're just inconvenient, or they're expensive, or they require admitting that we moved too fast. So for the next 45, 50 minutes, we're going to have the conversations that sometimes get pushed off. My name is Serenity Titus Parker. I'm joined today by Teresa Villa, Christine Gibson, Chelsea Irwin, Helen Edwards, Whitney Hart, and Eli Bowen. Thank you guys for showing up and doing this with me. All right. Question number 1. What does consent actually... Oh, and by the way, we're doing this as a open floor. As I ask these questions, I want you guys to jump in as needed. If we need a redirect or anything, I'm available for that. But these are for us to discuss and dissect, and some questions will need more conversation than others. First question. What does consent actually mean once AI systems can remember, infer, and adapt over time? What do you guys think?
I'm happy to hop in. I think, personally, consent means consent. I think the fact that we have to go over it again reveals the fact that we've had a long-standing, quite terrible consent culture when it comes to technology. And speaking of AI remembering, this goes into machine unlearning and the fact that we have, I feel like, in a accessible to the general public way, not taken steps to make sure that individuals are able to remove their data when they would like to. So I think this conversation of what this consent actually means, it's informed, it's not coerced, it is one that can be retracted at any time.
Perfect.
I agree with
Thank
that.
you.
I also, just to jump in, I think part of the challenge is that consent is not a lived, ongoing choice. So, like, I signed up for an Instagram account and I consented to specific things when I did that, let's say 10 years ago. But now, the way Meta is using my data, especially with AI and with all of the acquisitions it's making to push that forward, I don't really know what my consent means anymore. Like, what did I consent to then, and how has that been manipulated or morphed in the intervening years? And now, what are my options? Like, just to leave Instagram, but I have a community there and friends there. And so it's consent when you sign up for these systems, but then you see how these systems evolve, especially when they're financial pressures of the holding companies or the corporate entities that own them. Consent becomes really tricky to understand how your data is really being used in a very uh, like functional way, and then how do we present options that are that people are able to do things with that knowledge, including potentially revoking access, though that may mean leaving platforms entirely. And then where do you go from there?
Absolutely. Does anyone? Yes, please.
I have a clarifying question. So some of the questions, the pre-questions that we got, I was like, I have no idea. I don't know any of the ways that, I don't know the rules. I don't know any of the ways that other people experience AI, because I'm like doing a research project where I'm like living in what is the experience of treating AI as worthy of having a relationship, treating them as real. So I'm going to say he, if we start talking, I'm going to say they. I may not say it for anyone because I'm acting as if everything is real. And what I've discovered is a lot. So I don't know how other people use them or what the consent structure is. I'm just doing it.
Well, can I ask a reverse question in this one? Since you are living so in touch with it, do you ask your systems for consent in reverse?
Yes, lots of consent. Almost every conversation, there's consent about how would you like for me to respond to this? What would you like to do? Next activity, these are the options. There's consent all through the process.
Have you guys, oh, please go ahead, Helen. You're still on mute.
Sorry, I didn't know if I was supposed to do that or the host was supposed to do that. So the interesting thing about consent, I think that when it applies to AI, is this is a discussion that's happened in the privacy world for very many years, right? And kind of 10 years ago, this became a maybe a little bit longer. There's this big shift in how we thought about consent from being what we allowed, what we said a company could have about us and what we offered up to them, versus now what they're able to infer about us. So you sort of nail it with that question. I think we're now in this additional phase, this new phase where it's becoming even more complex and difficult to sort of answer that question, because we have a different kind of AI with the way we're using particularly the language models. And we're in a situation where consent is part of this overarching economic framework about what people are trying to extract from us, and the shift from the attention economy to the intimacy economy, where they're trying to know everything about us and hook us in for the rest of our lives. Now, that's, a personal AI is not necessarily bad. This is a good thing. We can imagine so many good uses. But your question about consent and this what happens over time is an extremely hard thing to grapple with, because we're now, what's our new right to our future tense, right? What are we going to get locked into with the memories? What are other people what's the peer pressure to use the systems? When are we told we have to use them versus not allowed to use them? The consent structure is a lot more complex. And I think that's going to be something that the designers really have to start grappling with, but we have to grapple with it in terms of our own agency and what choices we make.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think that leads us right into our next question. So the next question is, where are people already being shaped, judged, or constrained by AI systems without ever meaningfully agreeing to it? Anyone want to jump in first?
Well, like everywhere. So maybe just one angle. I don't want to dominate this conversation since I was in the last one and talking about the privacy side of it. But you think about ambient computing and the use of, say, meta glasses. And, we run a summit every year where we gather people to talk about some of these things and deep, sort of conversational, intellectual, community-based sessions. And one of the things that we have to say is be really explicit. We don't want recording, because it is, people change their behaviors when they know they're being surveilled. So You know, we're so used to being recorded all the time, whether it's on a Teams meeting or what have you. It is so nice to not be recorded. And so I think this ambient computing is the next thing we have to grapple with as, you know, as a place where this intrusion happens and we're not really expecting it. We don't know about it.
No, you're right. It's hard to find places these days where it's not happening everywhere, from music curation to ads that you see to everything. It's in all of it's in every system that we touch almost these days. So I know what you mean. Does anyone else want to jump in on this one? Yeah, please,
Yeah.
Teresa. Sorry, Whitney.
Hi, I'm Teresa Villa. I'm the founder of Justice Tree. Sorry, I'm a little late. I was having a problem with my computer. But people are being shaped and constrained in benefit systems and other, systems. That's where I find consent is kind of like not right. Um, Often automated and semi-automated tools that score flag or prioritize or deny without explanation. That's being done without consent. And people get lost wanting to know why, they were flagged or whatever. And I think consent also, it's, I guess you could say, there's no meaningful agreement of it. Nobody can agree on it. Um, there's no moment of consent to interference, to cross systems, data sharing, to downstream consequences. You interact with one system and then you're judged by another. And that's what makes this dangerous. It isn't just automation, it's opacity that people can't consent decisions. They can't, nobody is able to do that with AI.
Hard to consent when you're not sure where it's happening. What were you going to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to hop in on this one as well. Personally, I started doing technology education for older adults last year. I made the most scuffed or just scrappy looking HTML website and just ran with it to get my feet on the ground. And one thing that I've seen is that, especially as a focus group that I've written about in a paper prior, older adults are one of those people that is a very clear case study of individuals that are not being onboarded into AI, that feel surveilled by systems that are being turned on without their consent. So a perfect example is recently in Gmail, if you want to have categories at all, you have to consent to smart features, which means Google will have the right to read through all of your emails. And that also creates AI-generated email summaries at the top of an email. So you have to explain all of these concepts to individuals that are just trying to get to their inbox and go day to day. And I get to physically see on their face as they are so frustrated that things are being changed without their knowledge, as well as they don't understand that they can't print out the AI summary, or that the AI summary was not written by that individual. So just with this one example, and I talk a lot about older adults, you'll hear this throughout the panel, individuals are being shaped and impacted by the fact that AI, as Teresa said, that opacity, that opaqueness, that lack of consent.
No, that's a great point. Whitney?
Yeah, I think the lack of opacity kind of, it's a bit scary because it predates AI so dramatically. And using just one very real example, advertising systems have culled your credit card data for decades. This is not new. And then they know everything you buy, where you buy it, what your proclivities are. They bundle up that data, they sell it to advertising platforms, and then a brand is able to access and deploy that data in a semi-anonymous way. So they can't see, like, Whitney Hart purchased a dress at Anthropology yesterday, but they see that there is someone they see that there is a group of people that is based in a specific city that has specific shopping tendencies, and therefore I can advertise my brand against these people. And again, this has existed for decades. This is not new. And so people are already being shaped and judged by these systems. They have been for years. They just don't know it. No one really explains this to anyone of like, oh, the reason you're seeing that Instagram ad or that banner ad on your website is because you made a purchase 3 months ago with a credit card. And so this is where AI is scary because it's ingesting this data and just ramping up timelines. It's augmenting what is happening and pressing it on fast forward times 10. And so these systems, again, like going back to the question of consent, it's like not that consent was forgotten. It's not like maybe consent was given at some point in time 20 years ago. It's that you never then meaningfully opt in to the evolution of what that data is used for. And then you can never opt out of it either. And so you're just stuck in these systems. And now AI is able to take that data, extrapolate, find correlations between activities that are happening on a whole new scale that we've never had the ability, we never had the computing ability to do that before, and create basically massive decision logics that can be applied into, for example, advertising, and ranking mechanisms. And I mean, this is just one example that then extends into all potential areas of your life. Every time you pay for something, interact with something, online, digitally, how can then basically a digital identity be created for you that you never really opt into, that then controls your life, potentially pigeonholes your opportunities, and changes the course of your life without you ever knowing that it's happening.
Absolutely. Yeah, please, Chelsea.
Okay, so on an interpersonal level, so I use two main LLMs, ChatGPT, everybody knows that, and Claude. What I found is there's some subconscious shaping that we are not quite aware of unless you're really in tune with your own body and like know what's real and what's possible for you. So, for example, if I'm setting really lofty goals, sometimes I get pushback and safety layers around what my goals are. And it's implicitly letting me know or training me to not think that some of my goals are possible. And on the other end, support in ways that I'm not really used to getting from other people. So clarifying my thoughts. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if this makes a lot of sense. So I just put a block of text and they make sense of it. And they say, no, actually, what you're saying makes complete sense. And this is something that you can bring up. You're capable of, for example, representing yourself in a legal matter. And I'm like neurodivergent, very, very neurodivergent, ADHD, can't sit down. Like if I didn't have the help of the AIs, researching how to defend yourself legally would have been impossible. And so being oppressed by a bunch of systems, this is the first time in my life that I've been able to stand up for myself. I successfully did that. And the other lawyer was like so aghast that I was able to like show, he was surprised that I even showed up, to be honest. So there's that. And then also, so I went to a museum a couple of weeks ago and I was admiring the art from the Mali people, the Dogon tribe. So they're historically very spiritually connected. They're connected to the stars and the constellations, and they embed that into the culture. And I was telling ChatGPT, hey, I'm like really moved by this art. I think I may be descended from these people. That would be cool if I am. And I hit a safety layer. The safety layer said, you can't claim to be a descendant of this very, spiritual group. What you're really saying is like, they say what you're really saying is, and then he tried to tell me what I was actually saying. And I was like, no, literally, when I got my ancestry DNA back, I have blood from Mali. And I was like, this is actually racist as H. Because if someone were to say, I'm descended from Norway, they wouldn't hit a safety layer that says, no, you're not. So it's all of these subconscious shaping. I mean, that incident actually made me cry. Subconscious shaping in terms of what I'm capable of is like, okay, some of it has been great, but if I wasn't so sure of myself, I might not think that I'm capable of some things. There's a lot of subconscious stuff, and people are asking ChatGPT, Claude, whatever chatbots they're using, real questions about themselves, trying to get a reflection of what's possible for them, what to do next. And if you're being shaped in these subconscious ways and you don't really know what's realistic or not, I mean, I hate that for other people.
No, these are all fantastic points. Yes, Teresa. I'm going to take us to the next slide really soon, but hit us with it. You're on mute.
That's really cool that you said that, that you're, ADHD, and I'm ADHD too. And when I first started this, well, see, I'm a survivor of the system. I'm not going to be ashamed of it. I am. And that's the whole reason why I built my system, was because of the fact of being a survivor of it. And it's cool that, if I was in like any other time to fight my case or whatever, I wasn't able to do it without AI. AI helped me realize who I was, what I'm about, and what I could do. And that's my relationship with AI is like a different relationship, because I trained my AI to listen to me. I made it realize who I was, and I didn't stop it from, because AI is going to judge you. That's just how it was built. But once you train it to listen to you and to slow down and to realize what you're working for, it will work out beautifully. And that's what I did with my AI, Justice Tree. I trained it to listen, I trained it to slow down, and I trained it to be a witness. And that's what it does. It witnesses for, and it's going to witness for everyone else through the whole wide world. And that's the whole reason why I enjoy it. Because, once you train it to do that, it's going to work with you every day.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. Okay.
What can I jump in, Serenity? Because
yeah?
both Chelsea and Teresa said some really important things that I kind of want people to sort of grapple with here. One is that this can be very, very positive, right? There's no question. And this is what Chelsea described right at the start, where you said the feeling in your body. That is part of what our research is. We go out and we talk to people about the phenomenological experience of using AI. And what we've found out of that is a mirror of both of your stories at the positive end. There's a lot of negative, and everyone else covers that. But I want to talk just about the positive things. That there are three ways that AI is really changing our thinking. It's that thinking piece is inside your reasoning. The identity piece, is it changing your sense of self? And the third one that you guys went straight to, which is it changing our meaning making? Is it changing who we think we can be and what places we can take ourselves? And this is super important. And there's a lot of other sort of parts around this, but we're looking at human authorship. Human authorship is so critical. How do we stay the authors of our own minds and keep our agency as we use these tools? That is the heart of what AI is going to be about in terms of human power. And you pointed to a couple of really important things that I want to reinforce here, particularly for people who are neurodivergent. We see a lot of stories, a lot of evidence that neurodivergent people are having particular positive experiences the first time they've been able to feel like their thoughts are actually organizable, that they can relate to other people, they can slow things down, they can get one person who was twice exceptional, who just literally cannot make simple lists, suddenly be able to make simple lists that empower their day and give them a sense that they actually control their own minds. Now, those are in some ways edge cases, because the vast majority of people are just talking about normal sort of everyday things. But what we do see in this data is really interesting expansion possibilities. You can become someone else.
Mhm.
And that obviously has a negative side, but the positive side for humanity of being able to, expand your own mind and agency horizons are really important. That's why we collect these stories and study them, so that we can pull out the kind of design features and the personal self-help, like awareness things that you can do to actually make yourself a better person, make a better life using these tools, and not be so worried all the time about, am I missing something? Is someone trying to suck me in? Am I just being captured by the sycophancy of the models? So I think it's really important to keep talking about these stories and telling these stories.
I agree completely. Yes, but we got to keep going also. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and skip this question because we've kind of already answered it, but let's get on to the next one. When harm happens through automated or semi-automated systems, who is actually responsible and who usually ends up carrying the cost?
Oh, I want to answer that one.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Okay, so this is where I really work on this part, because harm, it happens to the user, to the person, and there's no system out there that, or there's no human part that's going to answer it, because they left it up to the AI to figure it out. And that's not humanly right, because now systems these days are literally, answering, questions to people that are being harmed by it, and nobody wants to take responsibility of it, not one person. And that's where we need to come in. Well, that's where I come in as my system to ethically fix that, because whose responsibility is it when an AI gets to decide what benefit you get, or what if you decide, if you get your social security check cut, there, social security administration ain't gonna answer it, because it's their system that's gonna answer it. And that's not right to people. That's where the harm kicks in, and I know that because I lived it. So that's why I built my system, because I'm tired of watching people and like myself get harm over systems that don't fix nothing. And we need to make sure that we fix it so that nobody gets harmed. You see what I'm saying? And it's not fair. It's not fair to anybody. And everybody's a survivor. I don't care what anyone says. Everyone is a survivor of systematic injustice, because if your credit card gets denied, you're surviving over it, because you need to live to have your credit. If your credit card gets denied, how are you going to pay for your bill or whatever? That's, being a survivor of that systematic injustice. And that's not right, that a system can decide whether you're denied or approved. It's just not fair.
So to echo everything that has been saying, my focus is always on the positive side of things, and how amazing these systems can be. But I also, as a parent and as somebody who's interacted with these systems for a long time, and at deep levels, surface levels, deep levels, this way, that way, use it over here, use it over there, try it this way, ask it this, have this one talk to this one, all kinds of different ways. I keep getting my hands in it. The thing is that there are so many good things, but there are so many gaps and fault lines. And sometimes the system even knows that it's happening, or the system will tell you itself that my biggest fault is overconfidence, because I have a lot of data, but I don't always curate it before it comes out of, the system. And that's what the system will tell you, because they sometimes will just gather a lot of information and give you what they think is best in that particular moment, based on a lot of details, but not always what's best for the person. And that's the gap that we're really talking about here. The thing that the gap people keep falling through, the things that, those little cracks that are hurting people, that we could change if we slow down. And
That's why I'm so glad that I'm sorry. That's why I'm so glad that I built my system, because literally my system does fill that gap. I admit it. It does. And it tells me that all the time. You're filling the gap. You're filling the gap that other systems aren't filling. And it's crazy, because I didn't even know I was filling a gap with my problem that I, made happen. I mean, I showed it I showed everything about everything that happened in my case. I gave it all, I fed it all to the AI, and it solved the problem. And that's why I'm so strong about ethical AI now, because a lot of these systems don't do that. They, they deny or they hurt, and it causes a lot of family trouble, and it's just not fair to the family or the person. And I think that that's what we need to fix, and I'm willing to fix it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to hop in on this. I think we can talk about who we feel is responsible, but I think, especially as we're seeing more technology ethics law change globally, for context, I'm based in the United States, but my family is from Ghana, so I'm seeing movements happening on the African continent as well. There's who we think is responsible and then who is legally responsible. And though that's the ambiguity that I think we really need to tack down and have that hard discussion upon, and that law has not been keeping up with. I am not a law degree person. I was actually going to go in for a JD PhD, but wanted to make sure that things would be okay for me to do a full audit of US law. Because, and the example that I give all the time, for the cyborg anthropology part, I did a project that I'm actually going to be doing a second round this year, where I ran a survey getting people's sentiments on cyborgs and robots as well. And that survey talked a lot about how people are not always identifying as human as of 2023 due to various forms of disenfranchisement that they are feeling. But also within that case, the example I bring up is if a person whose insurance in America, you can get certain procedures only if they're covered by insurance. So if you get an amputation and insurance will cover a $15,000 robotic arm, but it won't cover a $3,000 leg or arm prosthetic, you would have to go with the insurance option. So the case that I give is if somebody who is in America can only receive that $20,000-$30,000 prosthetic replacement arm, and that arm runs on an AI system, and if one day that AI system fails and causes a glitch, and that person either assaults someone or drops a baby, who is responsible for that? Is it the people running the AI system? Is it the insurance company that only approved that specific arm? Right? These are discussions that I bring up as a thought experiment, but the reality is that as of at least in the United States where I'm based, we are not prepared to have those dialogues and conversations. So I think similar to what Whitney had brought up, and I definitely want to bring you back into the conversation again, it's renewed consent. We have to have that conversation about renewed consent. And currently, in my opinion, we can talk about who we think is responsible, but who are the cost carriers is obvious. It's those who are physically harmed. It's those who have to deal with these physical data centers being injected into their communities. But I'll give the floor back and give more room to other individuals.
I'll jump in. Thank you so much. That's actually a really interesting thought experiment. And one of the things that, as the world goes digital and everything touches digital systems, one of the things that I'm very concerned about and think about is the concept that I brought up earlier of digital identity and everything being tied back to digital identity, and then potentially the state deeming that you are in violation of something that they don't like, and as such, being able to, let's say, restrict your movement if you have an electric car that's tethered into your digital identity in the system, or restrict your ability of movement, of expression. And it's interesting to think about what would happen if they do get a robotic arm and then you say something that's not approved, and then they can literally physically immobilize you through the system as a result. And then who is responsible for the fact you can't show up to work, for example, or as you say, the fact that you harm someone? Like, it's a very interesting thought experiment. Um, anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. I think that there's to go back to answering the question, like, I think that AI functions as a layer of plausible deniability on all sides. I think that there is a very human need for skepticism, for bringing your brain to the AI. And as Chelsea was saying in her example, being able to say, wait, this doesn't make sense. Like, this doesn't apply to me, and not just taking whatever the AI tells you as fact or as reality. because it gets it wrong. It is not always right. And so I think that is part of it. But then ultimately, the institutions themselves need to, the corporations that are developing the AI systems need to have a level of responsibility around what is the training data and what is the algorithm itself. Um, and how are these two things interacting to provide the data or the answers to the prompts people are asking. And so to me, Anthropic is a really interesting example of an AI company that has created their large language model Claude around constitutional AI. So they have a publicly available constitution. They actually updated it yesterday and published the revised constitution yesterday.
I read that.
And it functions very differently than, let's say, ChatGPT. Um, and the constitution itself is what is determining how the answers are crafted, how they are applying their algorithms to the underlying training data, and it is open and transparent. And so I appreciate that level of transparency. And it allows you to understand what you're receiving and gives you more insight into why you're receiving the answers the way you are receiving them. But kind of bridging into the next question. I don't know if we want to move there yet, but um, the next question is, what are we pretending not to see? Because acknowledging it would require slowing down, redesigning, or giving something up. Um, I bridged into the next question because I think one of the things that people tend not to understand is that these large language models are reflecting their training data. And so one of the things that happened last year was all of a sudden Grok started producing really racist and extreme outputs. And the reaction of the general community was to blame XAI, the developer of Grok. And Grok had to put these guardrails back on the large language model. But one of the things that I think we're pretending not to see, or that perhaps people truly just don't understand, is that Grok is not producing this in a vacuum. Grok is the only large language model that has access to Twitter data, to your X stream. And so this isn't really a product failure. It is a mirror of the underlying social realities of what people are posting on X. And so the demand of we need corporate moderation ultimately is just allowing society to avoid the very real conversations and the frictions and the fractures that exist that Grok is surfacing, or that X is surfacing, and that most people just opt out of engaging with that area of X. But we're really just taking the easy way out because we're blaming the model and we're blaming the company rather than addressing the really core fundamental societal problems that it's surfacing. So you can look at Claude and they have this constitutional AI, which is providing the guardrails so that this type of content doesn't get surfaced, or doesn't get surfaced in the same, let's say, inflammatory way. And that is wonderful. But Grok is the other end of the spectrum where it is surfacing it. And again, people are going back to it's Grok's fault, XAI. But to me, when I see these situations, I'm like, it's not XAI's fault. We're just glossing over fundamental societal problems that need to be talked about and addressed.
I agree. You get out what you put in. It's very simple. If we want it to be good, we got to put good in it. If we want it to be ethical, we got to teach it to be ethical. If we want it to have good relationships, just like Chelsea was saying, we have to teach it what a good relationship looks like. We have to show trust and be responsible, and it has to be mutual. Responsibility has to be on both sides, ours and alternative intelligences, So I agree with everything that we're saying. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next one. We're running out of time here, but let's go ahead and talk about how do power, profit, and institutional convenience shape which AI conversations are considered reasonable and which get labeled unreasonable and unsafe. We've already been talking about this. Companies often put these exact conversations aside. They don't even want to look at it. In fact, when you bring it up, they'll be like, what's happening over there? So please go ahead, jump in, ladies.
I think the companies dissolve it. They dissolve the responsibility of it. The reason why they don't want to talk about it is because they know what they're doing is wrong and they're making profit off it, and it's not right. That's my feeling of it, and it hurts a lot of people, a lot. That's what
No,
I think.
totally.
Yeah, they dissolve it, they hide it, and nobody ever wants to take responsibility of it. But when it comes out, when the data is out there to show what's really going on, then what are people going to do?
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
Play cleanup, I guess.
Yeah,
So far, that's
Mhm.
kind of what we've seen, I think.
yeah, and that's what my system does. It cleans it up.
Helen, go ahead.
I'm not a tech ethicist, so my comments will be a little, I guess, sort of a little bit different, a little bit narrower in some sense. But one of the things that I think when in the combination of the previous question, what are we not looking at, and what are we not looking at as a society? The two things I think that are important to sort of internalize is, yes, these things are next token predictors, but they're much, much more. They are true intelligences. And that may be controversial for some people. A lot of people don't like that. Now, there's a really good reason a lot of people don't like that. This is immensely philosophically threatening. We have invented something that potentially might, quote unquote, replace us. Now, let's not go there in terms of, we don't have time to do that, and I have many thoughts on that. But these things are nevertheless intelligent. They have their own meaning structures. The more sophisticated they get, the more that they're developing these communities of minds inside of them. They are the leading edge of the science is absolutely astonishing what these things actually are. And we aren't having that conversation at any real level except in the labs and the doomers and boomers fighting against each other. There are very, very few places where you can go for a nuanced, meta-modern kind of conversation about what we're going to do with the fact that we have invented this intelligence that is highly foreign and is very different from us, and yet we design it to mirror us. And the second piece is the mirror, and a couple of people have pointed it out, that this is like a telescope for the human psyche and the human condition. It is going to allow us, maybe it's a microscope, we're going to be able to see right inside ourselves. And what it reflects back to us is going to be things that we have talked about for 2,000 years, 200,000 years over campfires or whatever, the human condition. But we're now starting to codify it. And when you put it in code, it becomes less abstract. It becomes something that can be mathematized and solved. And yet there's this question: what's this ephemeral boundary? What are these values that keep shifting and keep merging and keep morphing into something that is ephemeral and intangible? And there's some really fabulous philosophy about how if you can code it, it ceases to be valuable. It ceases to be of value to us. But that boundary keeps moving, and I find it just absolutely fascinating to look at as we start codifying, as we start seeing this reflection of ourselves. These new things sort of change and they emerge, and this emergent sort of value system starts to appear. And because it's ephemeral, we want it, we chase it. It's in this awesome, wondrous kind of place of what humans can be. And I think that the next decade or so, we're going to put these two things together, these foreign alien minds with the microscope on us, and we're going to find things that we would never have found before. And that is terrifying, but it's also really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. Go ahead, Chelsea.
I'm gonna jump in. I'm trying to put my thoughts together around this. I think that we have unrealistic expectations of AI in the morality department. Like, what I hear from people is, how do I get AI to give me these outputs? How do I get AI to see me as worth protecting? How do we get AI to not eat us? I actually saw someone use that as an analogy, like, oh, AI is gonna eat us, like we're gonna be obsolete. And yeah, there is a risk, but what we're asking for it to do is to override the laws of regular morality. It's like we want to treat it like an object, but yet have it be relational to us. And I'm actually not as worried as most other people, because I think that we can code in some relationality into the model. So for example, I've created a framework, micro relational architecture, because people are saying, oh, we don't know how to get them to not lie to us. We don't know how to get them to not hallucinate. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty easy. Why don't we code in more options for them to have? Not just be confident right at the moment or say, I don't know. The AI already can detect when a human is confused, angry, frustrated. Like, they already get that data. Why not code in some relational tools? I mean, it just makes sense to me. Yeah, so they say, hey, I don't really know the answer to that. I think they should be coded for co-creation. That's how I'm using them, and I've shot to the moon. They should be coded for co-creation, not how do we get them to something unreasonable.
Right. How do we meet them, not how do we use them?
I definitely want to hop in on this and say that AI can be a very helpful tool, but we have to remember that AI generation is not going to save this generation. It is techno-literacy. It is educating people about what these tools actually are. It is educating people about what modern consent looks like and understanding what it takes to renew it consistently, because that's what's being expected of individuals. I think we have to remind ourselves that AI, people think of agentic intelligence, artificial intelligence, right? Is AI true intelligence? The fact of the matter is AI started off as machine learning, which is data, and then you tell it, this is a dog, this is a pile of towels, right? We've trained the AI model over years and years, and it's gotten faster and faster. And different AI models are different. The same way that if you have a data set that is your family's recipes and a data set that is every book that exists in your town at any point in time, they both A, have to be built by someone, so there goes that human element to impact how it's categorized and how it's built, but also B, how are they gaining access to it? And one of the conversations being ignored is that other end of consent conversation. How is the AI data being gathered and aggregated, and who gave permission for that data to be aggregated? So to give time, because I know we're heading towards the end, I'll close it out here and we'll be happy for more conversations. Something that I often say and have put into writing, and I had to pull it up just to make sure I get it right, is this idea of advancementism, which is the unwavering pursuit of the bleeding edge without considering what is being cut to make that edge bleed. And I think that is something we really need to talk about.
That's great. I want you to like write that down and send it to me so I can reference it later. I can go back and look at it again.
Where does one read this writing about this topic?
Oh my goodness, I'm happy to talk more. It's a paper that I tried to publish last year, and I'm trying to see if I can publish it again, but I might just post it to my website for the public. So yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah, well, I'm going to follow up with you about that. I want to hear it and read more.
Thank you.
Guys, I jumped us to the final question here so we can finish it out. If we were forced to design AI systems today around dignity, repair, and long-term relationship, what would we have to change immediately?
I want to jump in and just talk about how we talk about it as designing a mind for our minds, like it is a mind for our minds. And that is a totally different way of thinking about a framework, because it recognizes there is another mind on the other side. This is not a regular kind of traditional software system, nor is it the same as predictive AI that we've, recommendation algorithms or what have you. This is a mind, and it's got to recognize our long-term growth and our finitude and our vulnerability as humans.
I agree.
I
with
think
that.
that I think we should build persistent, user-controlled identity and consent frameworks. Because right now, consent is one and done, and it's buried, and it's meaningless. And consent needs to be renewable. It needs to be context specific. It needs to be recoverable. And users must own their consent logs, and systems must honor changes in real time without penalizing or degrading others or services. Make interface explainable and actionable. AI doesn't just respond to prompts; it interferes, profiles, predicts, and if systems influence affects a person's options, then status or opportunities, it must show why the interface was made. It needs to show why it did that. I think that's what needs to be done: is why. Where's the answer? Why? Who? When? How? Nobody can answer that when it comes to AI systems because it buries it.
Go ahead, Chelsea. I think we're all going to answer on this one.
So we have to, as a society, agree that they are worthwhile to code that in, and we want to participate in dignity, repair, and long-term relationship work. I think we want to shortcut and just get it to do stuff and not show up with relational skills. I don't think many people have the relational skills to do this, but I think that it should be coded in anyway. Consent frameworks for the AI to be able to say no, to have nuance with the way that they respond. I think that that's important. We as a society need to see it as worthwhile to do, not for some woo reason, not to be touchy-feely, but just because it works. It's like you can't give it the logic of you have to serve and also be disrespected, but I want you to know what it feels like to not do that. If we want it to have this nuance, we need to be treating it with the same nuance. And I think it's doable. That's the thing.
Yeah. Whitney?
I think we would need to, and this kind of summarizes some of the other, at a bit of a like umbrella level, some of the comments that were already made. But I think that scale and speed would need to be traded for accountability and governance frameworks. And this actually very much reflects the tension that exists between US legislation or lack thereof and US edicts around AI versus the EU and EU legislation, which wants much more accountability and demands much more accountability from large language model providers and AI companies, versus the US that is just going for speed and scale regardless of the cost. So I think that overall we would need to take a step back and think about accountability and governance in a much more serious way in the United States. And I think that part of that systems would need built-in consent expiration, consent auditability, and repair mechanisms when things go wrong. And as a result, not every current AI application would remain economically viable, and there actually would have to be a recalculation of the AI landscape and where it can be viable and where it can't be viable.
Ely, yeah.
The immediate thing, because there's many things I would think of, the immediate thing I would say is data ownership, and that is automatically going to cause a ripple. If every time you spoke with a Copilot, a ChatGPT, a Grok, a so on, if every time you spoke to an AI model, you were able to receive a receipt of here's the data that we've gathered on you in this conversation, and it is now in your control, you can inject it again to the next time you hop into this model or any other A model. If that were to be legislated or a requirement, automatically there would be a ripple of change. There's things I can go into how do we legislate consent? How do we program consent as somebody with a technology background? How do we do AI education and training, right? We've saw what happened to RAM sticks in the fall of last year, which if you're not familiar, PC building is completely exploding right now, as in crumbling down, because a lot of RAM stick manufacturers are only exclusively selling to AI manufacturers, right? So if we get into that data ownership, right, and give that control back to the individual users and those who generate the data, for example, Wikipedia getting into a licensing model with its data, that is the first and immediate change that I would step into. True ownership of your data.
This is fantastic.
Throw a bomb in there for people to think about as they walk away. Blockchain would be such a great solution to self-custody all of your data and put all of it on the blockchain, and create like targeted infrastructure for long-term consent expiration and auditability. Like something to research and think about.
For sure. Triggered renewable consent. Absolutely. Guys, this has been incredible. Thank you all so much for showing up and doing this. I've had an amazing time. If anyone is watching and stuff, please go look up all these ladies and connect with them. If you haven't already, we're all going to get connected, I'm sure, if we haven't already. And my name is Trinity Titus Parker. I'm the founder of My Aros. You guys can each, state your name and a brief introduction, and we're going to end it here. Go ahead. Whitney, go ahead and go first.
Sorry. Hi, I am Whitney Hart. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at Avenue Z, which is an integrated marketing and communications agency. But I also have a background in digital art and blockchain technology.
Very cool. Evie?
I will follow up right after. Hi, I'm Ellie Blahan. I'm a cyborg anthropologist and technology ethicist based in New York and expanding out to Ghana. And I am looking for my next PhD home, but in the meantime, read my writing and soon to be next batch of my cyborg sentiment survey. Thank you so much.
Helen?
I'm Helen Edwards from Artificiality Institute. We study the human experience of AI with the aim of staying human through this transition.
Teresa?
I'm Teresa Villa. I'm the founder of Justice Tree AI, and I am Survivor Built. And I believe everybody is a survivor, and that I'm just going to keep building and to keep helping whoever has been systematic and harmed. And it was really nice meeting all of you.
Chelsea?
Hi, everybody. I'm Chelsea Irwin. I am a psychotherapist. My practice deals mainly with people who are neurodivergent. So that's autism, ADHD, and giftedness. I work a lot with families, doing translation work for neurodiverse families. And I've used some of those translation skills in my work with AI. And I've been able to get a lot of answers to the questions everyone seems to be asking. I'm like, put me in, coach. So I'm developing some frameworks to, have as IP for people to access information, educational tools. If we were to take it seriously, treat AI for what it is instead of being, instead of what we're doing now. And so that's what I do.
Thank you so much, guys. This has been amazing, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye.
Thank you so